Burke, welcome to Digital Advantage podcast with OpenText and Dictator. How are you doing today?
Yeah, really well, thank you.
Tell us a little bit about yourself, Burke.
A lot of people say that they're, an industry veteran, but I've been around in the industry quite some time, 40 years overall, but really, as far as OpenText is concerned, 18 years focusing purely on information management and helping companies deal with, the problems that past has created. So it's been kind of an interesting kind of challenge with OpenText.
I think I'm a student of the industry and I love talking about history and time. Not that, I'm talking about age or anything here, but I want to know, if you were to talk about information management 18, 20 years ago versus today, what do you think are some of the things that people see differently or learnings that you think are still relevant?
Yeah, it's a good question. I'll answer that with an experience in a previous organisation that we had trying to deal with our own information management issues and dealing with IT sprawl and dealing with what we kind of talk about a lot now, which is around essentially digital debt within an organisation. So previous company we were at, we're spending around about $300 million a year on Microsoft kind of but dumb technology, just file servers sitting in a room. And we analysed globally, as a global organisation, we analysed what people were using that information for. And it was literally a dumping ground for, hey, I need to clear up my laptop, so that you dump your 500 gigabytes of stuff on it, clean your laptop up, but it would stay there. So they analysed all this. And that started a journey for that company about, we need to do information management right. And so instead of paying $300 million a year, they did what was an investment of $50 million of a new content management platform.
Right.
And basically that was mandated that that's what you do, and they shut everything down. They give it around 3 months to kind of organise it. So it showed me a couple of things, right? That massive transformation can be done, but it also showed me that the leader of an organisation is key for the transformation. And that has been pretty consistent. So getting the vision of what we can do now, which is quite different than back then, needs to come from the top of the organisations you deal with, because now it's about information being pervasive in an organisation, helping them make better decisions and do better business.
It's quite interesting. It resonates with me when you talk about the dumping ground. I used to be an IT tech guy on a service desk. You have to do the backup, and you'd have terabytes. Well, terabytes don't seem that much now, but back then it was massive. And all we used to worry about is how would we get it back instead of how did we use the data. Yeah. And I think that's so key to me. What you're saying right now is, even though we had those dumping grounds, there's new dumping grounds now. It's called the cloud.
And exactly. And what we tend to find with a lot of organisations is they are still viewing, a lot of them, like you were doing, everything was about backup and how do we recover it, which is not really about it at all, because it's a lot of organisations that we take through, we talk about this digital transformation, right? Yep. Coming to the new world. But what I'm really interested in as a part of the business that I kind of focus on is, well, what do we do with that stuff that we're leaving behind? Because there's a lot of value in that.
Yeah.
If we think about a lot of organisations need to keep information for a long period of time, especially things like healthcare and things like that. But they're leaving all this stuff behind. It's costing them an absolute bundle, and that acts like an anchor for this stuff going forward. So what you do with that and how you modernise that data and bring it forward and get value from it is the real interesting identifying.
Yeah, I want to touch on that a little bit. How does someone take a repository or a dumping ground like that and actually, besides the leadership, how do they start thinking, okay, how do I do step one to understand what it is and really sort of step into that journey?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question, because it's like all these projects, it's how do you start, right? Because sometimes they can be quite daunting. Yeah. So the best way to start, because is to sit down and we do what we, it's termed an application portfolio analysis. It's kind of thing. In other words, have a really good look at what you've got. What does it cost you? And where's the risk in that data? So there's got to be a little bit of kind of understanding of that content. So what I mean by risk is, in this kind of more crazy world we've lived in for the past 3 years, what's kind of paralleled the the pandemic is actually compliance across businesses. If you see the amount of businesses are coming out with compliance, and just even reading a new one this morning about, in Germany, they're mandating at the beginning of next year that anyone shipping information, not information, but shipping product into Germany, have to have gone through an ethical kind of thing, right? So it's the whole social ethical. So it's the whole thing's kind of really kind of crazy like that. So it's analysing the data and understanding how that impacts your business is the first step, right? Where is it costing us, and where's the risk to the business not doing it? And once you understand that, then you can start making decisions. We've kept this thing going for 10 years. We actually didn't need it because it is actually a waste of time because no one's made the decision of the value of it. So once you've done that, that's your first step in the journey, and then you can basically, it's like eating an elephant, right? You just break it down and you go, okay, pick up the ones that are probably the easiest ones to transform and move, but the ones that are going to give you the best return on money. So as you can get rid of the cost of that becomes an investment to be able to do the other jobs. And it's not as daunting as it seems. There's a whole lot of other technologies we can do to solve certain kinds of technical things as you're going on, but that's the start.
Yeah, I want to ask you, let's say if I'm a tech that looks after this stuff every day and, I look after the backups and I look after customers, how do I sort of pitch that conversation with a key stakeholder higher up in the chain to make that worthwhile?
The way I'd go around that is to kind of explain about what this, as you're saying, the whole backup and recovery, because it adds no value to someone at the top, right? It's plumbing, but it's a big cost to the business. Yeah. So you can have a conversation saying, look, we can reduce this cost and time and effort to just do backup and recovery by taking that data, putting it into a platform that is managed for us. We get access to that data regardless where it is, but we've reduced the cost of the business. And then talk about how do we reuse this to add value to the business. So if it's customer-facing kind of data, why not expose it to to your customer-facing applications so that you can add better value to it. So it's talking about the value, saving cost, but the value for the business going forward. And executives will get that. Yeah,
I learned so much. I just spoke to Ian, and one of the things he said is focus on content. So if you see your data as useful content, then it becomes an easier conversation. You believe that as well?
Oh, yeah, absolutely, because a lot of organisations tend to kind of not think about a lot of the historical kind of data because it's just there, they're not doing. So in the case what Ian's talking about is, and in dealing with the old stuff, is what do you do with that in that process to deal with it? So modernisation is kind of a thing to do. So we talk with organisations and they might have old systems that they want to provide the information that comes off those to existing clients, but it's old and it doesn't comply with new modern rules. So think about some of the old financial kind of reporting information that under the new regulations around accessibility, so if someone's blind, but still needs access to this digital data, a lot of the old tech doesn't work, right, because the technology doesn't understand it. So we can modernise that through our technology to add all those kind of accessibility things so that now it's kind of modernised. So that's one thing. And the other one is using artificial intelligence, as they call it. But just think about it as data and linguistics understanding. So understanding what is actually in all of that information. Once you understand it, then you can use it for other things, so you can make decisions on it. Is this good or bad for the business? Get rid of it. Yeah. Does this add value to a process? Push it into that. So understanding the value. It's like mining for gold. So you think about all the mining of in the real world. It actually has a very, very close applicability to the mining of the data. Yeah.
I know that we're talking like 10,000 feet about data and data advantage. I know that you look after Documentum here at OpenText.
Oh yeah, it's one of the things, and Documentum's been around for a while. It's key, and a lot of global organisations, the very large ones, use Documentum because of its scalability and its support of a lot, especially in financial services. But it's like any big system. It doesn't have to be Documentum. In the old way, that can quickly easily become old. Right, old from the point of view that because the cost of upgrading them is a massive project in itself, they can get left behind. Yeah. So, the great thing with with modern technologies and bringing all as much of our software solutions into that to to be able to get away from the concept of ever upgrading your software again, right? Delivering it as cloud native solutions, and that goes across all of the technology. Interestingly enough, Documentum, when we had it back in the day, we were probably the first from a content management perspective to take advantage of all this new technology. So from a containerization, cloud deployment, all that technology actually was coming through from that sort of stuff. Because at the end of the day, we have customers that in the traditional way would have a 18-month project to upgrade all of their big content management repositories, $1 million services engagement. If you think about you'll do that every 3 to 5 years, that's a big burden to an organisation. So one of the organisations now have taken Documentum, upgraded it into the cloud native, to the new modern thing, and now they upgraded, well, it's not even an upgrade anymore, it's an update every 3 months, and it's a 1 week just deployment, and it's just business as usual. Yeah. So technology now allows, from an IT burden perspective, to solve all those issues, and it's really taking those organisations, the old ones, on that journey to get them to the same point.
Look, you can't ignore some of the news items we've seen around data breaches in the last few weeks.
Yeah. Right? Well, unless you got your head in the sand.
Yeah. If I'm a CIO or a CTO in this day and age, and I want to start keeping at my core cyber risk as my ultimate goal, where do you think CIOs should start looking internally to themselves to really, I know we talk about the data, we talk about the people, but at the sense of it, it's an ethos of how we do things. Where do you think that people need to sit?
So we've always had this concept when we've talked about, and it generally came from the more traditional things like records management, right, which is managing data in compliance with regulations. Usually it's more mandated in government areas and things like that. But if we think about, the idea was fairly narrow, just managing with that. But if you take that concept and bring it forward, what we're wanting to do is, from a cyber security perspective, everything needs to be automated so that what we call the security of information, understanding the data protection of it, is not something you have to do, but is a byproduct of just doing your normal work. So it needs to be done in software. So when we talk to an organisation, there's kind of two things that are kind of that I've noticed that are fairly key. One is obviously at a pure cyber security level. In other words, through, and OpenText has a great arm all around cyber security, which is how do we stop people getting into an organisation, stop that physical breach first, but then how do you actually deal with once they get in, or understand that, manage that. So it's understanding all of that solves one kind of problem. Yeah. But the bigger problem is, if you don't understand the information you have, well, what kind of security are you going to give it? Yeah. Do you understand a document that has some valuable information into it needs to be protected? So for example, that we're seeing the last 2 years, and especially in the financial services, is new compliance regulations. So we have customers that we've helped through that have to go back through 20 years worth of data, and all of a sudden they've been told that you have to get rid of credit card numbers and tax file numbers that are in forms and images on the things, which is, so a lot of different technology because of the different thing has to be done. So if you think about that, it's using technology to understand what you have, and then you can make some rules around it and protect it. So if you're finding content that is sitting where it shouldn't be, like just sitting in a file server with no security around it, understanding it and then saying, well, that's a very sensitive document that could to do with personally identifiable information. That should be in our core content platform that has the security and all the models through it. So that kind of put the stuff where it belongs and manage information through understanding is the kind of the first step. And then the other one that we're seeing now, which is the harder one, is if you think about, we're so focused on the breaches from outside, right? So with all these bad actors, but actually, like most retail organisations, most of their what they call shrinkage, which is stuff, isn't from people outside walking into a shop and stealing it. It's internal people stealing their own stuff. 80% of shrinkage in a retail organisation is by employees.
Right.
Think about that in an information sense, and it's not far off, right? So where the biggest cost to a business is someone stealing intellectual property and taking it with them. So these are people that they have the rights to this information, but because they're a bad actor, they can do something with it. So it's understanding people's behaviour as well. So having capability within your solution to understand that someone's doing something different. So here's for me, working during the day, all of a sudden at 2 o'clock in the morning, start downloading a whole lot of documents. Security-wise, I'm allowed to get access to it, but it's behaviour that's different. Understanding that can protect you from those kinds of insider threats as well. So it's complex, but it's doable.
Yeah, it's quite interesting. I think when you were talking about this, my main word was context. The context of the data you have and the context of what people are doing at what time. And that's so interesting because you do need to have some depth understanding if you're a CIO or CTO what you're trying to do.
Yeah, exactly. And look, no one says this is an easy challenge to solve because a lot of it does hinge on, especially the internal people, on people's behaviours and characters. And as we know, people are complex. So having information that allows people to do their business and do it well without any what we call friction in it, so having the information, the context within the solutions that they're dealing with, but also being able to understand how people deal with it and being able to track behaviours in it. It's pretty key to managing it all. So, but it's got to be invisible. Right? It's not something that someone has to think about. It's just something that the systems understand it. So to take that into context, if we think about when we're taking customers down a journey of how do they kind of get there, how do we deal with information when it first comes into an organisation is one of the key things. So if you think about whether it's a bank or something, think about an onboarding process. You sign up and it says, well, give us 100 points of identity. So you want a copy of your driver's licence, you want a passport or whatever. So the idea is as that comes in via a photo or a scanned document, you instantly capture and understand what it is, then you know what to do with it. But you can also then use that as a way of instantly realising maybe if something's wrong, if they've uploaded a document that there might be something obviously wrong with it. So it's once you understand your information, but also make sure that everything that comes in as a part of a process is dealt with at the beginning.
Burke, you strike me as a man, if I gave you a whiteboard, you'll be able to draw this all up for me. I think we're going to have that session very shortly, I reckon.
Yeah, absolutely.
Burke, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it, mate.
That's great.